Thank you for your time today. I'm John Bicus, President of PBI, and also with me is Mike Schoenveld, PBI's Director of Sales, and welcome to today's webinar on proactive participant plan management. To start off, I'm going to provide a 2 to 3 minute introduction to today's topic, and then I'll turn it over to Mike for a deeper dive into key elements of proactive participant or pension plan participant management and a new solution from PBI. As a leader in the participant management space, PBI has introduced several new industry-leading products over the past several years, including CertiDeath, which is the only complete death audit solution in the market, and Fiduciary Locate, which is the leading locate product that follows DOL guidance for locating missing participants. PBI is unique in that over the past 3 years, we've grown our solution suite to include a complete death audit solution, DOL-driven locate solutions, beneficiary research solutions, uncashed check solutions, and a data cleanse solution. And as a result, PBI is now one of the few, if not the only company that can provide all of these solutions under one roof. As a result, we've been able to start looking at participant management more comprehensively. And just like we did with CertiDeath, we've developed a solution called CertiCensus, which addresses many of the issues faced in pension plan participant management, including avoiding overpayments, eliminating concern over DOL audit due to outdated participant data or missing participants and beneficiaries, mitigating cybersecurity risk, which has become huge in today's world, as we all have heard, and effectively keeping track of and coordinating the workflow necessary to accomplish all of that. So Mike is going to walk through the issues we see at the forefront of pension plan participant management and briefly touch on the comprehensive solution we are introducing to help solve those issues. So with that, Mike, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Great. Thanks, John. Also, once again, good morning or good afternoon, depending on which side of the coast you're on. But once again, we appreciate your time and attendance. Over the last 8 months, PBI has hosted a number of webinars discussing various challenges, how our clients see those and have addressed those, how PBI is addressing those, as well as our business partners are addressing those. PBI has been handling location and death audit services for over 40 years, and during that time, we work with hundreds of different pension plans and also, as you can imagine, different partners, administrators, financial institutions, and insurance carriers that all have a vested interest in a pension plan. Today, we'd like to summarize a couple of these challenges, how customers are addressing them, but also, as John had mentioned, a new solution PBI has introduced based on that customer feedback and what we've seen in the market. But first, let's recap the DOL guidance from January. I think it's important, and we're not going to go into the weeds, although PBI has been involved in this space for a number of years. Full disclosure, I am not an ERISA attorney. But that said, is the DOL guidance in January of 2021, or this year, was the first time that the DOL has issued direct guidance in a number of years. The guidance really spoke to how plans need to address missing participants, but also how does this apply? Or who does it apply to? It does apply to both defined contributions as well as defined benefit plans. The DOL highlighted really 4 best practices. The first being to maintain accurate census information. And the question really is what does that mean? How do I manage or really maintain that accurate information? And part of that is to regularly communicate with participants and beneficiaries to confirm who they are. Are they still where they are? Has a name changed? Has a beneficiary changed? Maintaining online systems to allow those participants to update their own information has been key. When you think of the evolution of technology, especially web-based technology over the last 20 years, it's been significant. And so having those participants, giving them the ability to update those on their own has been key. Auditing this information. How do you do that? How do you manage that? How do you know that it's accurate if a participant doesn't respond? The other thing is to make contact information and updates part of the acquisitions and transfers of the plan sponsor and the plan and employer record. So as that goes from an administrator or from the plan to the administrator, making sure that there are consistent updates in that. The second one was to implement more effective communication strategies. Again, what does effective communication strategies really mean? In past webinars, we talked through that. We had additional partners from legal experts as well as other plans discuss this, but really trying to use plain English and trying to really clearly communicate the reason for the communication. As a participant in a pension fund myself, I receive communications frequently throughout the year, and quite honestly, there are many times that ends up in the recycling bin. So how to capture someone's attention, how to be able to see that, for the participant to see that it's coming from the plan, but also to get them to engage. And that's part of it too, is just the encouragement with the connection with the plan, and also to mark envelopes and make them very obvious that it's something that they need to take action on or to be aware of. 3 is to improve missing participant searches. So all plan sponsors have told us that their constant challenge is not only to get somebody to respond, but when they do respond, how do you make sure that you're updating those records? Or if they don't respond, but it comes back as a return mail, how do you make sure that you're able to follow up with that participant and address that information? Likewise, there are times that the information might not even be apparent. So how do you work with different data sources and data providers such as PBI to help fill in those gaps and to make sure that that information is accurate? And the 4th is to document procedures and actions. This again is in some ways easy to do, easy to document. A lot of our clients will tell us that ask us, what does a document need to look like? What are other plans looking at in terms of documentation? How detailed do the documentations and steps need to be? But managing those and creating those is a need. The other piece that our clients have voiced concern with, and one large plan sponsor had given feedback on, is that they recognize that their policies and procedures were really good. In a recent internal audit, the auditors found that the processes and procedures were well documented, the steps were very clear. Their challenge was ensuring that those that were responsible for those steps and procedures were actually doing those steps and procedures. And they found that that was not the case. In fact, there were failures in those procedures. So having regular audits or checks to ensure that those processes and procedures are followed, which is a challenge. The other thing that the DOL did is provide guidance relating to cybersecurity. And we, again, spent some time in a past webinar discussing this, but really it covered 3 different pieces that the DOL provided guidance on. And that's tips for hiring a service provider for both sponsors and fiduciaries. Talked about cybersecurity best practice tips. This included also a 12-point best practice list and what the DOL might expect to see during a review, which is very insightful. And then also, what does this guidance mean for participants, how to, and what's likely to inform a DOL investigation, what could impact litigation. And really, depending on the resources the plan has and really the access to those resources, these documents can be helpful, but they also require consideration on how to implement these new procedures and also leverage the people and the technology to do so. In addition to the updated guidance from the DOL, staying on top of the data associated with participant management is a challenge. PBI, again, has been in this field for 40 years. And when I even look at the death audit process as an example, 10 years ago, around 2011, pre-2011, the Death Master File would give PBI roughly about 99% of the death matches. In 2011, there was significant legislative change that really started to erode the impact of the SSA DMF. And since then, what PBI has been able to track is a demise that really, if you're relying solely on the Death Master File, you're only finding about 23% of all the deaths, which does lead to overpayments, which is an impact to the plan. As part of that, state death records started to fill some of the gap. PBI also obtains obituary records to fill those gaps. The challenge is today, PBI has over 26,000 different data sets to manage and fill this gap. Service providers today, and PBI has legacy products on death data as well, provides that death data to the plan. The plan sponsor then, plan needs to go through that data, needs to evaluate that data, and needs to sift through it to find those decedents. The challenge with data and the challenge with time is today, obituaries are coming from newspaper obituaries, tribute sites, funeral homes, a long list of different data sources. Additionally, each death on average has 3 to 5 different obituaries associated with it. So trying to match all of those different points and relying on obituaries that could be very detailed to very skim can be a very big challenge to a plan sponsor when they have to go through that data. As John mentioned, PBI launched a service called CertiDeath that has addressed that, and we can be more than happy to share more about that offline as well. But there's a lot of risks in managing these population sets and managing the data associated with them. What we do know, though, is an audit will happen. Understanding your population and proactively managing these records is required. So clearly documenting your process, understanding how your records are updated, how are you communicating with your population, how are you avoiding overpayments is critical. That said, having a documented process also requires that that process is followed. As I shared earlier, we have clients that have expressed a great appreciation for the documents that they have and the procedures they have. However, those responsible are not always managing those. There's turnover in groups. There might be an absence. Somebody's out ill for a period of time. With COVID and work from home, that's changed in how these processes are now implemented as well. And as the number of solutions increase, it's important to understand who you work with and how you can avoid sharing plan information with various sources who may have different safeguards in place. A number of clients we work with have even started to consolidate or look to consolidate the number of service providers they work with to help minimize risk. When we think about the challenges in cybersecurity today and the breaches that exist, understanding your providers and the safeguards they have in place, such as a SOC 2 audit, for example, is critical in understanding how that data is managed. Another way to manage your participant population is through mailings. This continues to be an effective way to provide updates to your participants, but also with that return mail, it helps you understand when somebody has moved. So as I shared before, as a pension holder, it's in my best interest to notify my plan when I've moved or there's been a change in potentially a benefit. However, as I continue to age, I haven't been a part of that plan in 10 years. So the likelihood of me proactively thinking about the plan diminishes over time. Hopefully, as I get to an age where the payments start to become real, that incentivizes me more, but we also know through our experience at PBI that that's not always the case. And the burden doesn't fall on me as the participant, the burden falls on the plan sponsor. So really trying to engage this population and ensure that you have the most up-to-date information, not only prior to mailing with them, but when the return address comes in or the return mail comes, having a process in place to handle those. And what we found is that that is a key challenge to our clients. As John mentioned, PBI has been working with plan sponsors for over 40 years. Over the past 3 years, PBI has created new solutions to help identify decedents through our CertiDeath death audit solution, which is the only death audit solution in the market which identifies the deceased individual versus providing you with data. So it eliminates that review process. By eliminating that review process, not only has CertiDeath proven to find more deceased individuals, it eliminates that work and has a very defined process that PBI can show and share. Additionally, PBI has developed location services products, which has increased the finding of missing participants and beneficiaries, and again, has a well-documented process around the steps taken to identify those people. Recently, PBI introduced CertiCensus. CertiCensus was developed through this feedback from our clients as a means of eliminating really what we would consider the fire drills which arise with managing a pension plan, specifically missing participants or overpayments, finding beneficiaries, and communicating with participants. The challenge that our clients have expressed is not the fact that a death audit is something that they do every single day, is not the fact that they have to deal with return mail every single day. The fact is that these are tasks that over time compound. So if somebody is overpaid for 3 months or 6 months or a year, the plan has different requirements on how to retrieve those funds or attempt to retrieve those funds. If it's an electronic deposit, somewhat easier than if it's a physical check, but having safeguards in place to manage that, eliminating those eliminates those downstream processes as well, saving the plan time and money. Likewise, understanding participants when they move versus sending out a mail and seeing and addressing the return mail, which is in of its own self a challenge. The CertiCensus process will proactively identify where people are at, actively monitor that population. If there's an address change or a name change, that information is then provided back to the plan sponsor. And then throughout that process, again, understanding where individuals are at, but providing that reporting, and really that reporting that provides an audit trail to understand specifically what actions have been taken over that course of a year, for example, over the course of the agreement period, but really understanding what communication methods have taken place, what steps were taken to identify those missing participants, what steps are taken to identify decedents within the population. Those reports are provided. And again, working to eliminate those fire drills that can exist when managing that participant plan. At PBI, we're interested in sharing more on this process. We're also interested in sharing more about how our other clients are addressing some of the challenges that they have. If you are interested in learning more about PBI solutions or CertiCensus, please do not hesitate to call or email me. But as John had mentioned before, this is a smaller group, which is nice because we should have some good dialogue as well. And the attendees on this call are also a varying mix of plan sponsors of different sizes. So I'd encourage, if you have any questions, please chime in on the chat side, and we'll work to address those. But I do appreciate your time and participation. With that, John, are there any questions that have come up?
Yeah, so we'll give people time. We did get some questions in advance, Mike, and so let me read one or two of those, and then we can see if there are any additional questions or topics that come up. So Mike, a couple of questions that have come in. Can you provide more detail around the locate project process, specifically the mailing process, and what options PBI offers?
Mm-hmm. So let me talk a couple of steps. So from a mailing process, if we think about an annual funding notice as an example, PBI can handle annual funding notices, and we have clients that we work with to mail out their annual funding notice. But if I use that as an example, as kind of the action, PBI can provide services to look at the data and do what we call an unconfirmed location service, to review all of those addresses to understand, are there any changes? Did somebody move? Is there an update that we see? So we can provide that back before an annual funding notice is sent. But we would then send and can send the annual funding notice. What PBI then does is work with our clients to create that. There are templates that we use, but we've worked with our clients to create those and mail those out. What we then work with is, if we think of the return mail that can come from those, is we have another service that we call fiduciary locate that really looks at and is meant to address those missing participants, those individuals that a plan sponsor has not been able to hear from, has not been able to communicate with, doesn't know if they're at the same location, if they've moved, basically looking for a more accelerated, more aggressive location project. With that, what PBI will do with our fiduciary locate is send up to 3 letters. So we'll send it to the address of record, we'll send it to any new address we find, and then a 3rd address as well that we might find as well. So really in an attempt to send it out to as many locations as we can. PBI also uses other data sources to seek to identify where that individual might be. So some other information to really understand, are they active in a certain location? Do we see that there's potentially some other location that they've been identified in. We'll also have outbound phone calls. If there's a phone number that we've identified or a phone number that the plan sponsor has, that will provide that outreach, really trying to identify where those individuals are. So the scope of services that we can provide are extensive. We also do certified mail with a signature card as well. So not just a certified mail that you hope that you have the right signature, but certified mail with an actual documented signature card as well is a service that we provide.
Okay, great. So another question that came in, how does, you mentioned beneficiary search, what is that? How does it work? What methods are used to locate a beneficiary?
Yeah, so the challenge that we have with beneficiaries, or plans have with beneficiaries, is somebody could list a spouse, and that spouse could be at the same address. That spouse could have moved, right? Or maybe children are involved if it goes to an estate. So our beneficiary research service looks at a number of different sources, including our death records and our obituary data. So as I mentioned before, we have over 26,000 different data sets that we can comb through and look through to see if there are various children or spouse that are noted. We also use third-party data providers and sources to, again, seek to make those connections on where a beneficiary or may be, or who they might be. PBI will look at those beneficiaries that are not only the spouse, but also children of the spouse. We use some social media sites as well to seek to identify those individuals. So the DOL had given some guidance to try to use various social media sites. PBI doesn't use social media as a direct means of contact, meaning that we wouldn't send a Facebook message to somebody, but we do use various sources to identify, are they active, are they who they are? And so the response back, or the output back to the client, is a very detailed list of all the different sources that we went to. Confirmation where we can find of not only the spouse, is that spouse alive or dead, children of the decedent and the beneficiaries that would also be there, or if there's another family member, for example, that could be designated as a beneficiary. All of that is included in the output file and the output report back to the plan sponsor.
Okay, great. And a third question that came in, I don't see it after this, so we can ask people if they want to jump on audio if they have additional questions. But you mentioned CertiDeath as the most complete death audit solution. How does that differ from other solutions PBI offers or other solutions in the marketplace? And I'm happy to jump in on this one, Mike. So as Mike mentioned, one of the big changes in the death audit category over the last 10 years was degradation of the Death Master File, as many of you probably are aware. It used to cover 95% of deaths, and now it covers 23% of deaths. As a result, you need to have more sources, different sources to identify deaths, which typically means state death records that are available and obituaries in many cases, right? So the whole death audit process has become much more complex from both the data source standpoint and the type of data included to verify a death. And as a result, the categories changed. It used to be a death audit with the Death Master File, then it morphed into basically death data, which is what PBI used to provide, and most other providers currently provide, all of the providers provide, which is you give people a list to track, and they get back to you with people they can confirm are deceased, and some people, or many people, that you have to confirm yourself through your internal processes are deceased. And that's not a death audit solution. That's a death data solution where you're not getting the full answer. So PBI recognized that and spent literally millions of dollars to invest in create CertiDeath, which is a full death audit solution. So now with CertiDeath, you give us your population to track. We use our 26,000 plus sources combined with artificial intelligence and something no one else has, which is human intervention, right? So we have people who actually look at obituaries that might be matches, and as a result can give you full death audit results. So we're not getting back to you with, here are some people who are deceased and here are some people who might be that you have to do the research on. We're actually enabling you to now have all the answers, right? So if you have internal processes or resources that you've dedicated to that, you can redirect those to things that might be more valuable for you. So CertiDeath is essentially going back to a full death audit solution once again, we cover 95% of the deaths. We've compared that to what the DMF used to cover. So we're at where the DMF used to be. And it's the only complete death audit solution in the marketplace. So that's the difference between CertiDeath and even the standard solution PBI offers, which is death data, or the solutions all other providers offer, which are death data, right? Okay, so that was the other question I saw. Now, Carlene or Megan, I haven't seen any other questions come through. If there are, feel free to read those, or else people can jump on audio, I think.
Actually, John, we had one question come in. Can you talk about the sources used to confirm deaths? Also, how do we get cost information for CertiCensus and CertiDeath?
Yeah, so I'll jump on the death sources, then Mike, you can talk about the pricing. So sources, we have over 26,000 sources for death audit, and that's comprised of the DMF, the publicly available DMF, which you now have to register for and jump through a bunch of hoops and pay more money for than you ever had to. So it used to be available to most anyone who wanted to spend a couple $100 a month. Now it's only a few hundred people across the country who I think have access to the partial DMF, right? So we use the DMF, and that covers 23% of the deaths. We receive state death records from states that are willing to disclose those. We don't generally talk about the states that we get those from because that's a competitive advantage. We have unique ways to talk to states about their death records and access those, and we think we have more state records than any other provider. And then obituaries. So we actually have our own internal obituary solution, where we're the only provider out there that has their own internal solution. We go and access obituaries daily from over 26,000 sites. So it's a complicated procedure. 7,000 people or so die a day. So you're not talking about a lot of data, but you're talking about having to go to a lot of places to get the data. And it was a complex system. It was part of our investment in CertiDeath, where we can depend on our own source for obituaries. Most other companies can't say that they have to outsource their obituary access. That's a benefit to you because we're not ever going to come to you and say, well, our provider cut off obituaries, right? So we use, once again, we use the DMF that covers about 23% of deaths. We use state death records for those that will provide it. And we have a unique set of state death records, and we use obituaries, and we grab those obituaries on a daily basis, which enables us to be comprehensive and also to report deaths faster. So with that said, Mike, I'll turn it over to you for the pricing side.
Yeah, so from the pricing side, it is going to vary based on plan. What PBI looks at from a pricing methodology is the value pricing. So we've got clients that pay varying ranges dependent on the size of their population as well as the value derived from that. So for example, a plan that might have 500 participants will pay a different rate than somebody that has 50,000 participants, right? So we'd be more than happy to walk through that. The thing that PBI also provides with CertiDeath, as well as CertiCensus, but if I focus on CertiDeath for a moment, is a complementary CertiDeath analysis. So it is not uncommon for clients to say, hey, look, I'm hearing what you're saying, but prove it. And so what PBI can do is take a file, take your pension file, we can run it through our CertiDeath analysis process, which goes through a number of different components and parts. And what it does is it provides a high-level assessment of the population, meaning we'd be able to say how many deaths we've identified, how old the deaths were by date. We are also able to provide a couple of examples to prove out that it's not just random information that we put together, but actually give you a couple of names to show that the CertiDeath process is effective and works. So we'd be more than happy to do that. That's a complimentary process. Typically what it takes from start to finish is about a week as we complete a non-disclosure agreement and a complimentary analysis form and then provide those results back. That also helps us from a pricing standpoint as well, because there are, again, different results that can take place and different benefits to each firm. So we want to make sure that the value and the return on investment is really a key piece in how we provide pricing. For CertiCensus, it's very much the same, as we do look at it based on the participant size and the work product, but CertiCensus is intended to be a fixed rate product. So it isn't a product that would have gaps and have additional requirements, a la carte fees. It is a 3-year contract that has an annual rate that covers anything that requires address information, beneficiary research, death audit, as well as a required communication, such as an annual funding notice, is baked into that pricing. It's really intended to take the projects and take the fire drills off the plan sponsor's plate. So again, that stack of paper that starts to build up that is these are beneficiaries I just need to find, or we've got these return mail that comes back every single year, we got to do it, or by God, I know these people are missing. If the DOL comes, I need a solution for it. That's where CertiCensus is really intended to address. So we'd be more than happy to, again, provide that complementary analysis and provide high-level assessment on the health of the files, and some pricing with that as well.
Great, thanks, Mike. So I know we bumped into time. I want to be aware of that for everyone. We've provided information on CertiDeath, CertiCensus. Mike's contact information is on this last slide that you can see, so feel free to reach out to him, or if you're an existing customer, one of your sales reps who can talk to you about either of those. With that said, Carlene, are there any more questions that we should address before we sign off here?
Nope, that is all of them.
Okay, great. Mike, any other closing comments here?
No, just want to appreciate everyone's time. Obviously, this is a commitment of time, and we appreciate your involvement. And again, if you're a client of ours, we appreciate your business. And if you're not a client of ours, we'd welcome the opportunity to earn your business. But thank you, everybody.
Great. Thanks to everybody, and that concludes today's webinar.